Hey there Emperors, and welcome back to Azir School. A lot of people have asked me to go over new builds, including masteries, runes, and items. This is a very special episode where we'll be going over a new build that I have created. This build is definitively the best Azir build. Let's begin. A lot of you from last episode had the idea that I hate Rod of Ages and Roa based builds. This is not true. While I do like Rod of Ages, that particular setup I did not. Think of Roa like an Akali, very weak on her own, but with a bit of babysitting, she'll grow into a monstrous powerhouse for your team. Roa is the same way, though not good on its own. With a bit of help from runes, masteries, and proper build orders, it can grow into something great for you and your build. Let's take a look at what I mean. Alone, Rod of Ages is very weak for Azir. It delays attack speed power spikes and pushes his early game into a weak lull of damage that can only really be made up for during the late game, where you finally get your power, if the game isn't already lost by this point. But by substituting a few runes, you can change the way you hit your power spikes. Let's see what we must do to our rune page to combat the early game. Here's the standard rune page for Roa Azir versus the standard rune page for Nashor's Rush. As you see, we've added some attack speed to our marks and quints. There were a few options here. We need 10% attack speed on our runes for this to work. Quints give 4.5%. But sacrificing 2 quints for attack speed over AP will lower our early game power more than it will help, because we have a lot riding on the AP, such as our poke with Q and Thunderlord's procs. Alternatively, we could substitute more of our marks, but then we will lose the magic pen that will help us scale and keep our damage high until we finish our sword boot. The rest of the page is standard, so we'll move on to the masteries. Here it is almost all standard, but there is one thing worth mentioning, specifically Biscuit versus Assassin. This can go to personal preference. Biscuits are great for anyone, but Assassin is only good if you plan to fight. I personally take Assassin because it boosts my poke damage and allows for easier all-in, especially if the enemy laner does not have it. Now something very important before we get into the item build, your skill order. This is where we deviate from most builds. Leveling your Q to 5 as quickly as possible doesn't work for this build. There's a reason we only take 10% attack speed in runes and not more. With 10% attack speed, at level 3 your W will give you 50%, the same as Nashor's Tooth. With this build, we level our Q to rank 3 to get early pressure and poke during the lane phase. Then our W to level 3 to help get this 50% attack speed power spike that we would normally get when building Nashor's first item. This way our power doesn't dip during mid game due to lack of attack speed. We get the same amount of attack speed and even more AP than if we were to build Nashor's Rush instead. Finally, what you've all been waiting for, the build itself. As I mentioned before, the order in which you purchase your items is very important. Your first or second back, you must buy Blasting Wand or you will be extremely weak. Normally, for this amount of gold, you would be buying a Fiendish Codex for 15 less AP but 10% more CDR. You'll have a burst in damage at this stage, a strong one, so use this power to harass and even go for kills if you see the opportunity. Your next recall, you will be buying your Catalyst or even your Roa if you have the gold. At this stage, it's important to finish your Roa as soon as possible to start stacking it. Next, we buy Nashor's. In other Roa builds, Nashor's isn't finished until last item. It's usually left at Stinger. In our build, we finish Nashor's because for 1800 gold, 80 AP and 10% CDR is a huge spike in power. It also has the highest amount of synergy with our next item, Void Staff. Void Staff, as our 4th item, will scale immensely with Nashor's Tooth. The more attacks we get off, the more we make use of our magic pen. Think about what we were sacrificing in our runes. AP and magic pen. What does Void Staff give us? AP and magic pen, and a lot of it. The AP scales with our attack speed, and the magic pen scales with the extra AP we get from finishing our Nashor's. It's the perfect combination of 2 items we could have at this point in the game. Also, at this point in the mid to late game, our opponents will begin to get magic resistance, making an early Void Staff all the more valuable. After Void Staff, we have lots of options. If you find yourself up against lots of melee bruisers such as Darius, Illaoi, or Mundo, consider taking Rylai's as your 5th item. It will help you immensely in kiting these slow melee fighters, keeping them off you and allowing you to continue shredding with your magic pen and high attack speed. You can also go into Death Cap if you find yourself safe and just want that extra spike in AP that will really boost your damage output. Finally, you can opt for Zhonya's if you need to engage for your team safely or find yourself against burst heavy assassins. After this, fill in your build with Rabadon's or Luden's Echo. If you went Rabadon's, chances are you won't need a Zhonya's or you would have gotten it, so you can continue your assault on damage by getting burst AP from Luden's Echo. If you build Zhonya's, get your Death Cap so you can hit that amazing 6th item Death Cap spike. And that's it for the full Roa build for Season 6. Let's quickly talk pros and cons. The Roa build may not have as sharp and powerful spikes in damage, but it scales very well and you barely lose anything by optimizing your runes and skill order. You gain a lot of survivability against the high damage that the new season brings. With the right runes, masteries, and skill order, we make Roa build far more effective than Nashor's, by giving ourselves survivability, insane item synergy, and high late game scaling. Thank you all for joining me during this special episode 10 of Azir School. If you'd like to help support me, my Patreon is linked below in the description. It would mean a lot to me if you could all take a look at it, and also if you could click the Reddit link in the description of this video so we can help get the word out about this new build. Thanks again for watching this episode. Good luck, Emperors.